It all started with something as innocent as a shared love for a sport, a connection through mutual passion. That's how I met Joe. We became friends naturally, as most people do when they're united by a common interest. There was something simple about our friendship, and I thought it was the kind of bond that would last. At the time, I had been dating my girlfriend, let's call her Jane, for just over a year. Things were good, or at least I thought they were. Jane wasn't particularly into the sport I played, but she insisted on coming to my training sessions. I found it odd that she wanted to tag along so often, but I didn't mind at first. She said she enjoyed being around me, watching me train, supporting me. You'd think it was sweet. At least that's what I thought. But looking back, hindsight is always 20/20, and there were things I missed, things that seemed insignificant at the time, but would soon unravel everything I believed about our relationship. The first red flag was subtle. Jane started acting differently around Joe. At first, it was small stuff. She'd laugh a little too hard at his jokes, make more eye contact than necessary, or fidget nervously whenever he was around. It was the kind of stuff you'd pick up on but brush off because you don't want to believe anything's happening. And Joe? He's not the brightest guy. Honestly, one of the most clueless and unambitious people I've ever met. I couldn't see what she saw in him, but I dismissed it. I thought, I provide everything for her. Stability, loyalty, a future. There's no way she'd ever throw that away. But life has a funny way of proving you wrong. Things took a turn when I hit a rough patch. I had been working a solid job, but after a series of unfortunate events, I decided to leave due to poor treatment. Suddenly, I was unemployed for about 2 months, which put a strain on my self-esteem. I was stressed, uncertain about the future, and worried about providing for us. Meanwhile, Jane's behavior became even more suspicious. She wasn't just acting differently around Joe, she was spending more time with him. I found out she had been talking to him behind my back, messaging him on social media, meeting up with him in secret. What hit me the hardest? He was picking her up from our house, the home we shared, and I had no idea. It wasn't just secret messages and meetups. She started going to the gym with him, grabbing lunch together, going paddleboarding and watching sunsets. Romantic, right? Except I wasn't the guy by her side anymore. Joe was. And it didn't stop there. Jane sent intimate pictures of herself to him. I found out when she casually mentioned that she had sent the same pictures to me and to him like it was no big deal. That was the moment I laid down a clear boundary. I told her in no uncertain terms, if you don't cut him off completely, we are done. You would think that someone who claims to love you would respect that boundary, right? Well, not Jane. Instead, she turned off her location, started ignoring me more and more, and refused to go out or do anything with me. The physical affection that once flowed naturally between us dried up completely. No more hand-holding, no more kisses, no hugs, and certainly no sex. It was like living with the ghost of the person I thought I knew. But deep down, I knew what was happening. The writing was on the wall. Then came the night that shattered it all. I was at the training ground, helping out with some kids, when I got a message from Jane. I'm going out with Joe. I'll be home before you finish. That wasn't unusual. She'd been going out with him more and more lately, but something in my gut twisted when I read that message. I got home at 7 p.m. Her car was still in the driveway, but she wasn't there. She never came home. I had no idea that the night before she'd done the exact same thing. Gone off with Joe while I sat at home, clueless. That night, I stayed up waiting for her, determined to confront her and end things the moment she walked through the door. But as you probably guessed, she never showed. At 11:30 p.m., I got another message. We need to talk. I already knew what was coming. I begged her not to break up with me over text. I pleaded for the dignity of an in-person conversation, but I had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. While I was pouring my heart out over text, Jane and Joe were back at my old house spending the night together. Joe, in a pathetic attempt to justify it, later claimed he was protecting her from me, as if I were some sort of monster. Let me be clear. I'm a police officer. I've never laid a finger on anyone in anger. I don't do drugs. I rarely drink. But Joe painted me as some kind of abuser to cover his own betrayal. He even had the audacity to say he slept on the couch that night. Yeah, right. For over 6 months, they had been sneaking around behind my back, doing God knows what. 3 weeks after we officially broke up, they were posting about each other all over social media, ducking out in public, acting like the perfect couple. I found out through mutual friends, of course. I had blocked both of them by then, but it didn't stop the news from reaching me. Eventually, I told my friends to stop updating me. I didn't want to know anymore. Joe, the spineless coward, tried to get in touch with me through those same mutual friends. He wanted me to unblock him, to clear the air and make things right. What a joke. I told him to go to hell. Funny thing is, he couldn't even look me in the eye when we crossed paths at training. He couldn't speak to me, couldn't come near me if I was alone. Yet he still ran his mouth to others, trying to justify his betrayal. Jane, of course, had checked out of the relationship long before any of this came to light, but almost every day she would lie to my face, telling me she was willing to work on things, that she wanted to improve our relationship. We never argued, not seriously anyways. There were no screaming matches, no epic fights, but the few times I brought up my concerns about her weird, inappropriate friendship with Joe, she turned it around on me. You're insecure, she'd say. You're acting petty. You never let me have any friends. Classic narcissistic behavior. I guess the thing I still can't wrap my head around is why she didn't just leave me sooner. Like, why put me through a year of uncertainty of hell? Why not break it off when she realized she wanted to sleep around with Joe? Why make me feel like I was the one failing? Like I was the one not doing enough? After 3.5 years together, I asked her to meet in person for one last conversation. I felt like I deserved that. She ignored me for 2 days, claimed she didn't want to meet because she was afraid I'd hurt her. Hurt her? After everything she put me through? The idea was laughable. I've never hurt anyone in my life. But that's how she justified dodging me. Finally, I had enough. I sent her a final message. Meet me at the park at 7 p.m. exactly. If you don't show, I'm leaving, and I'm blocking you on everything. She didn't respond. I got to the park early at 6:30, and I waited. As soon as the clock hit 7, I sent her one last text. I waited 30 minutes and you didn't show. I'm putting the spare keys in the mailbox. Goodbye. Suddenly, she blew up my phone with messages. You said around 7, not exactly 7, she protested, but I was done. I blocked her on everything and I walked away. I had known Joe for 2 years. He was someone I trusted, someone I invited into my home, drank with, hung out with, and all along he was weaseling his way into my life, trying to take what was mine. But don't get me wrong, Jane is the real villain here. She's a narcissist, and I was too blind to see it. Deep down, though, I always knew something was off. Watching her interact with Joe, I had this sinking feeling that something would happen, and it did. It's been about a month since everything blew up, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. I've heard all the usual lines from friends. You'll be fine without her. You're better off. And I know they're right, but that doesn't make it any less painful. Never in my life could I have imagined doing something like that to someone I loved. What kills me is how Joe goes around telling people I used to beat her, that I have a drinking problem, anything to paint me as the bad guy. But he won't even speak to me when I'm standing right in front of him. That tells you everything you need to know about his character. Jane was 90% of the problem, and Joe was the other 10%. It just blows my mind how people can act like that, towards their partner, towards someone they called a friend. I'm emotional right now, and I just can't figure out why she strung me along for so long. Why couldn't she just break it off? Why make me feel like I was the one who was wrong, the one who was failing? But now it's time to move on. And I couldn't be more ready. This woman's fiancé proposed to her in Greece. Then she found out he was cheating on her with 3 women at the same time. Check out this video to find out the wild details.